Once we are ready now to put this into the barrel, we actually will age our wood prior to making a barrel. And what we're doing there is we're removing the tannins. For those who love red wine, I can't enjoy a good red wine because the tannic acid is so high, it's very rough for me. So what we do is by aging the American white oak, which is always a lot bigger, bolder, versus the French oak, which tends to be a little softer. We age that so that the tannic acid will go down, and we age that for 9 months to include no less than 1 summer. So all of our wood is aged essentially 1 year. And in doing so, we remove those resins or that tannic acid. But an interesting thing happens along the way. The vanilla starts to grow, and that 9 to 10 months we get a big peak of vanilla. So we know now it's time for that wood to go and make a barrel. Now bourbon, again, you must char the barrel with a flame, and it is literally burning of the barrel, but we only char the barrel for 40 seconds. Most other bourbon distilleries will char for 90 seconds because they're using unaged wood, because they have to burn off. There's a lot of resin that's on the surface, and they're trying to create like a charcoal or carbon layer so that it can kind of remove that. But because we've aged our wood, we only char the barrel for 40 seconds. We preserve a lot of the natural sugars inside of the wood so that once we start to mature, we're going to reduce the proof from 65 down to 55% alcohol. We're going to put it in the barrel. We want the low proof because alcohol will extract out everything, and we don't want the high proof because it just extracts out that much more. We're only concerned with getting the sugars and breaking down some other various components to add mouthfeel to our bourbon. You notice that the color is light. This is about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. And again, a brand new charred white oak barrel. And we put this in at the very top of our warehouse because what we want is we want it to get hot because we want that alcohol to penetrate into the wood and then start, when it gets cold at night, it starts to extract everything out. And it's this breathing of the barrel, or the oxidation driven reaction starts, but the breathing of the barrel begins to extract out all the flavors that we're looking for. And when you smell, you smell the vanilla, the wood, and then in the background, very soft, you still have the esters, that white bowl of bananas and apples from the San Luis family yeast strain. Now when we taste, please. You have a lot of wood, but then immediately subsides. It almost it tastes a little rough. Nothing is in balance, because up at the top, what we're doing is we're doing our extraction. That's where we're pulling out all of our sugars. That's where we're concentrating on getting all of our wood goodies out, our sugars and various other compounds. Because now what we're looking for is that hint of wood. We want to only take it to a certain point, because the hotter the warehouse and the hotter the whiskey, the more wood you drive in, the more wood flavor, which will begin to mask or cover up what we started. So now we're going to rotate those barrels from the top floors of the warehouse down to the bottom floors of the warehouse, where it stays much more temperate. It's not as hot, it stays very cold. So now we did the extraction up top, now we're going to do the reaction at the bottom, where we're going to start bringing our flavors together. Yes?
How many rows do you have usually in your warehouses?
6 stories.
Okay. And in each is one barrel?
No, there'll be...
I mean, in each row is just one barrel and then there's the next row coming?
Yes, yes. 3 summers up top. We're going to rotate down. Now we're looking for another 3, maybe even almost 4 years down on the bottom floor, because Maker's Mark is done to taste, not by time. If we did this by time, our flavor could shift, because last year in Kentucky we had an incredibly hot and dry summer, so the bourbon matured at a faster rate, and we want to make sure we have that consistency. And this year we're having a very typical summer: hot, humid, rain, sunshine, a little bit of drought. So we're having a very typical summer, which is what we want. So we're always tasting, because everything is done to taste. Now, it's not just me. There are 20 other people, including myself, who taste this whiskey, because it's about the group. It's not about me. And if I have an off day, or if somebody decides to drag me away from the distillery to another country, somebody else needs to be there as well. So we have a group, and the taste panel decides, okay, these barrels, it's time to rotate. And now, as we taste, our next step is going to be Maker's Mark as we know it, and what you can get here today. And if you look at the color difference between the 2-year-old, which was what we just finished tasting, versus this, you notice that the copper hue is much deeper. And when you smell, the vanilla is much bigger. There's a lot more complexity. And in the background, you can still smell those nice ripe fruit characters coming from the Samuel's family yeast. Again, that bananas and apples, you can just barely pick it up in the background. It's very soft, very subtle. Now, when we taste, again, what we're concerned about is maintaining that flavor forward on the palate. And it's the small steps that we took along the way to get us there. If we skip any one of those small steps, then we change the flavor profile. And Mr. Samuels put it best to me when I was hired. He said, don't screw it up. That was a very nice way of saying it to me. He actually said it in some other American terms. So, but it is that sense of tradition that brings us to our Maker's Mark. So now when we taste, notice how the rich caramel, the wood, see how it sits on your tongue? Very nice, even. Now it wants to start to move more forward and finish forward. That is what is signature of Maker's Mark. That is the Maker's Mark flavor profile that is unlike any other bourbon. No other bourbon will move forward on your palate. Other bourbons will begin to move farther back. If you have older bourbon, which we will get to here in just a second, you will see exactly what I'm talking about and the effects of the tannic acid has on bourbon. But you notice how it's still feeling nice and creamy, and you have the tingling up towards the front of your tongue. That is Maker's Mark. That is Maker's Mark. This is our, what we refer to as our over mature. This is about 10 years old. Again, same formula. We've done everything the same. We spent the first 3 summers up at the top floors of the warehouse. Now it's spent roughly the last 6.5, 7 years down on the bottom floors of the warehouse. And when you smell, big vanilla, real nice ripe fruit characters, you're thinking, wow, this is really good. But when we taste, notice how the wood is overpowering. Notice how it almost feels dry. And you can feel your back of your throat begin to dry out.
Very sharp.
Very sharp, very rough. And that's the tannic acid. That's the tannins coming out of the wood. And wheat, soft red winter wheat, is a very delicate grain. It does not age as gracefully. So again, that's why we're doing this to taste. And that's why we do not age Maker's Mark any longer. And again, Maker's Mark can be as old as 5 3/4 years old to almost 7 years old. And that's always because we're doing this to taste, never to time, and we're always making sure every stage, not only am I tasting, but our taste panel, all the way to our Vice President of Operations, she is tasting. We make sure that the same flavor is there every single time. And again, it is that flavor forward on the palate that is Maker's Mark.
Oil on the top, especially like with essential oils, they're really going overboard with that.
Really?
And so just...
But do you have a doubler in between them?
that was our job. I didn't know if that would kind of...